Hey guys, Ed with Solomon's Landscape here. I'm going to take a couple minutes. We're going to do a little bit of training on some trees, and so we're just going to go over a quick couple of topics on how to properly prune some branches off the trees. But we're going to go over tips and techniques on how to prune your trees. And that fall is a great time to do it when the leaves are off, but you can prune pretty much any time of the year. The biggest reason why we prune trees realistically is for us. You know, if they're left in the wild, trees are going to prune themselves. The dead, dying branches will eventually fall off and prune themselves. When it becomes in a landscape, what happens a lot of times is we get these trees with lower branches, and so it tends to happen. You got sidewalks, you got walkways, you got driveways. In this video here, we got a driveway next to these trees here, and so it tends to happen, like I say, is when somebody's nearby in the landscape, or if you're trying to go underneath it, mowing it. The reason we prune these trees mainly is just for aesthetics, number one, and number two is just for ease of access, to be able to get underneath the trees and we're not bumping our heads, poking our eyes, things of that nature. Yes, you do want to prune also for any death, disease, to help reduce or increase the longevity of your tree. However, these tips and techniques will help you show the prescribed techniques and the proper techniques on how to prune shrubs. And like I said, keep in mind the example that we're using is a small crepe myrtle, so some of the techniques we'll use will actually be more so on the larger branches and larger trees. But we'll go ahead and go through that, and we'll explain it as we go. So here's our tree. We got a crepe myrtle here in front of us, and again, like I said, this is just an example. So it's a smaller tree. So it's pretty easy to maintain and prune. We'll go over a couple of the things that we want to do. So on these lower limbs, how this one's a little bit lower, in a landscape setting, you know, eventually they'll grow out and potentially might just be smacking your head. So when we want to prune, I don't know if you can see this or not, but right here, actually we'll go over to another branch here. Hopefully the sun's not in the, well, the sun is in the way. Let's go over here to where the sun's not in the way. So what we're looking at, this is a perfect example. So yeah, what we're looking for right here is when we're pruning, we want to prune at the collar. So what that means is we want to prune, see where this is really thick and then it slims down like right in that location. That is the collar right there. That is the actually smallest portion of entry for the anything to come in and out. So if we prune too far, what'll happen is this will die back and then it'll provide an open wound. With too far, you know, of course, if we go too far this way, then of course we're opening a much larger wound. So that's the smallest surface area right in there. Here's an example over here. I just saw, yeah, right here. Let me move out of the way, getting the sun's in the way, I apologize. But yeah, right here. So this one, see all this is all rotten dead wood. And because this rotten dead wood didn't get pruned properly, what's happening is it's now allowing insects and diseases to transport itself in here. So as you see, the tree's trying to heal itself by growing around this, but unfortunately, because it's so far out, it can't grow. So it's almost like leaving a sliver within your hand. So what you want to do is see how all that's pretty much dead wood there, and so that dead wood provides an opportunity for stuff to come through. So you just want to prune that off, and now what happens is that'll have a much easier time to heal up over time. You can see it's starting to do that now. So that's what you want to do. Here's another example, a little bit harder to see. I'm just pulling this away. So that's healing up really well. See how the branch is coming around that and kind of healing that up. So it's still an open wound, but it's starting to heal up really well. And again, see, even just this little bit could cause issues, and so we just want to get it as close as we can, just like that, but not too far inside. So yeah, basically that's how we want to prune. And so this is I chose this one here. So when we prune it, we want to go ahead and prune it as close to that collar as we can. I'm using the hand pruners. And you want to get a nice clean cut. That was probably one of the larger pieces that I would cut with the hand pruner. Anything larger than that, I probably would want to take the loppers too, so which will show. But essentially, you know, these small ones, we can just come in right to where that crotch is and just cut it. We use the loppers. Again, the loppers are doing the same thing. They're just a little bit larger. So you got these larger loppers, which then is able to get these larger limbs. So anything like that size or larger, like, you know, I'd probably prune that one. No, I wouldn't prune that one, but something that size or larger. When I get to something this size, you'd want to use a saw to do that, and we'll talk about saw techniques in a second. So the loppers, same thing, just coming in. So here's an example, just coming in. Obviously I could use the hand pruners, but the loppers would be doing the same thing, same concept, trying to get it as close to that collar without going too far back. So going back to this, so you can see a little bit fatter right there, so I just got it just past that, so that'll heal up quite nicely there. And so again, the loppers are the same thing. Obviously I could use the hand pruners on this one. And so that's what you want to do. Anything that's kind of lower, I usually say about 10 feet or lower, 8 to 10 feet is a good ground clearance. And if it's hanging, a little bit less than that. And obviously you don't want to take more than you want to. So I usually, when I'm pruning trees, just kind of take your time, walk around it, you know, stand back, look at it, see which ones are needing to be removed, which ones aren't. And just like I said, take your time with it. And it's better to do too little than too much, because you can come back at a later date if you need to and remove more. It's harder to prune out or put back anything that you removed. So that's on the pruners, and that's on the hand pruners and the loppers. So the next one that I see a lot of issues with is when we get into the saw. So when we get sawing, obviously there's nothing large enough here that I want to really prune with the hand saw. So what I will do is I'll come over here. We're gonna pick on this branch right here. This one's a tiny, teeny one. So obviously, you know, I'm gonna use a loppers or hand pruners, but let's just say it's a little bit larger branch. I can come in here and, you know, find the crotch, and then I can just come in and saw it. So if I do that, so the issue becomes when we're sawing, especially when we're doing it with larger limbs, much larger than this, they tend to be heavy. So what tends to happen is when you saw it just like that, this will come down, and what tends to happen is you see that tear and that split, all that weight from the branch is going to tear into the, you know, and then make it look ugly and open. So that's not what you want to do, because that's just going to invite more issues and problems right there. So one way we can avoid doing that is, let me find another branch to pick on. I will pick on this one here. So we'll pick on this one here because it's, well, why not? So to avoid that tearing at the bottom when you have the larger limbs, again, this one's smaller, so it's probably not going to cause any issues. But when they do get, you know, like a limb like this or larger, they tend to have a lot of weight, and so what happens is if you just start at the top, it'll tear again. So to avoid that, we do a 3-step process. We do typically, I don't even know what it's called, but 3-step process. So what we do is we come up, you know, we want to cut, this is our final cut here. So what we want to do is we want to come up a little bit, you know, a couple inches, depending on the size of the limb, you might want to go a little bit farther up. This one's not too, you know, pretty light, so I'm going to go up to here. I'm going to go do what they call an undercut and stop about halfway. And so what that does is, you see, it undercuts. And so all that weight, when we do cut on top, which we're going to do next, all that weight will have, this will be already cut, and so it's got nothing to peel or pull back. And so our next cut, we're going to come in and we're going to go just a little higher on the branch. We're not going to go lower, we're just going to go slightly higher to make sure that we get that there. So once we do that, that'll happen. And so usually you'll see a little bit of slice there. So that way, when this branch, obviously it was in the tree, but let's say, for example, it's heavy, it comes falling down due to gravity, you know, that branch is now going to hit this and then clean cut. It's not going to pull that bark from underneath. So once you do that, then you want to come back, because again, we don't want to leave a nub like we did back here. We want to come back, find our crotch, which I can see it right in there. And then we're just going to come in and cut it like that. So that's essentially how you do tree pruning. And so I did miss it slightly. You see it's a little bit narrow here, but that's still pretty good. That's pretty close. And so that'll help. So here's another, got a couple more examples here of what happens when it heals up. You see the little nub on this side. It's having troubles healing up because of that. But over time, you'll see that, even this one is got this edge sticking up. You can see it's healing over quite nicely, but it's having some problems healing over because this is sticking out farther than it should be. And so it's exposing that wound for a longer period of time. And here's one that's pretty much all the way healed up. So that's what it's going to look like over time, and that's going to fill in, and all you see is a little bit of a bump. So you won't even notice that. But generally speaking, you want to try to avoid and make those pruning cuts as smooth and as close as possible to the collar to reduce the actual size of the wound, to avoid any pests or problems or issues. So hope that helps, and thank you guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.